right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on another Therefore webinar. Today, we have a really interesting topic, which is one that's often requested that people are very interested in hearing about, and that is using REST calls in Therefore. So you may have seen in the invitation that this is more of a technical topic. The way we're going to approach it today is not from a very technical point of view. So just to be clear, this is not a technical training. However, we are going to be looking at some demos. So we're certainly going to be looking at REST overview from more of a marketing and sales point of view. And then we are going to end up looking at a few live demos of what REST calls in Therefore actually look like. So before we get started, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kono from the digital engagement team, and I'm happy to be bringing you this webinar today with none other than my colleague Roman from the team. Roman?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Roman, as Kono said, and I'm the learning manager at Therefore. And today, together with Kono, I will demonstrate a few examples of REST call tasks, such as exchange rate conversion or integration with an accounting software called Quickbooks. So I hope that you will enjoy this webinar and learn something new about this great feature.
Great. Thank you, Roman. So yes, we're going to first be going through some slides just to give you an overview, and then Roman is going to show us a few demos. So we have a quite nice division of the content today. So as usual with Therefore webinars, we welcome your feedback. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A in Zoom. The way we do this is that we will collect your questions in the Q&A and we'll answer them then at the end of the session. So please don't be shy. Don't be afraid to ask any questions you may have. One last thing I wanted to mention is more more abilities to learn about this. So I said this is not a technical training, and what today's webinar should do is provide you with a good basic understanding of what a REST call entails. If you'd like to learn how to design and configure a REST call yourself, so basically go beyond what we're learning today, check out our Workflow 3 course, which is in our e-learning, available on the Therefore Extranet, our partner portal. It is available to Canon and Canon partners. The only limitation is that you need to have already passed Workflow 1 and 2, as this is a course that builds upon knowledge that you learn in those two previous courses. I will say you don't need prior experience in scripting or programming in order to benefit from this course. So just because you may not have programming knowledge doesn't mean you can't take this course and learn something new from it. So what are the main points we're going to go over today? First, we're going to look at what are REST calls in general. We know there's some people on the call who are new to the topic. I'm sure a lot of you already have an idea, but for those who don't, we will just have a quick overview of that. We're going to talk a little bit about advantages of using REST calls. Why would you want to use them in the first place? We're going to look at some examples, which then Roman will, of course, demo live for us. And then the final part is we're going to look at some sales and discovery questions. So this is a little bit more for the sales and marketing folks in the audience. It's a quite quick overview of how you can use the knowledge that you gain in this webinar to actually help you address customers and find solutions for their needs. So what is REST actually, or what is this all about in general? REST calls are, well, they're a communication essentially. They allow Therefore to talk to other applications or services in the context of Therefore. So Therefore can get information or send information from or to another application that also supports REST. When Therefore sends out a REST call to another application, we can ask for information or we can receive information from that application or service. Basically, in some REST calls allow two software services to talk to each other, to communicate. REST itself is an acronym. It stands for Representational State Transfer. It's a set of rules that developers follow when they create their API. One of these rules, for example, states that you should be able to get a piece of data, which is called a resource in this terminology, when you link to a specific URL. So each URL is called a request, while the data that is sent back to you is called a response. And that's really the core of a REST call, request and response. The way it works in therefore is that we initiate a REST call using a workflow task. So that's why we see our workflow logo here. The workflow task will start the communication with another application or a web service, which is represented by the cloud here in the graphic. The information is then sent back to therefore, and then to you, the user here using your client as part of the workflow. This means that if you want therefore to be able to exchange information with another application or service, you have to use the call REST task, which is it's an optional part of the therefore workflow. So we said that therefore can talk with other applications or services, but what are some examples of these? I'm sure a lot of you have heard about REST. You know that it's a very common topic. It's a very common thing to hear in technical circles because it's a very popular and a very common type of communication structure between two applications. So as a common example, we could use a REST call to get accounting information from an ERP system or an accounting system prior to saving a document in therefore. We could also use it to, let's say, update information about an invoice in therefore, do things like check to make sure we don't have the same invoice, or get information from really a number of other systems. You see here some examples like Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce, SAP, stuff like that. As I said, it's a very common, very widely used method nowadays. So there's really no limit to the kinds of services that can be called. The only thing is that the application that you are trying to call, of course, has to support REST, right? It has to speak the language, sort of. It's usually pretty easy to find out if an application or service supports REST because they advertise it quite heavily, because it does add such a great value to the software. So it's really just a matter of like looking up. You can even just Google, for example, service name REST API, and you should be able to find pretty easily. I want to mention, since it's often asked when we talk about REST, if therefore also supports SOAP, which is another communication protocol, SOAP. It uses a slightly older technology. The answer is actually no, therefore does not support SOAP, only REST. So the way that this is done through REST is using methods. So therefore supports 5 different ways of doing REST calls. Officially, these are called HTTP methods. And another way to think about it is almost like if it were a language, these are our verbs or actions. And these are the methods of either sending and receiving information to and from another system that supports REST. So what are these verbs or actions that we can do? The first one is get, which it gets a resource from a server. It's essentially read. Then there's post, which creates a new resource on the server. It's like write or create. Put and patch are similar. It's not really within the scope of this webinar to go over the fine differences between that. But what these do is update a resource on a server just in a slightly different way. It can be seen as an update operation. And then there's delete, which I think is pretty clear. It deletes a resource from a server. Now, of course, not all systems will support all functions. So you may, just to give you an example of what I mean by this, you may be able to get information from, let's say, Google Maps from their API, but certainly you can be sure that you won't be able to delete information from Google's server, obviously. So that's what we mean when there's limitations to what you can do. You do have to check the documentation of the app that you're connecting to. So in the end, you don't get to decide which one method to use. It will be decided for you by the third-party app or service. Again, we want to stress reading and understanding this type of documentation is important. And it is covered actually as part of our e-learning course that I talked about earlier, which is the workflow REST calls course. Another thing I wanted to mention is it's also interesting that you can within therefore, you can make REST calls both internally or externally. So internally is based on processes or documents within therefore. Externally is to get or post information from an external service to or from therefore. So what is an example of this difference? With an internal call, for example, you could be using a REST call to delete a document. You could update a keyword dictionary, or you could execute a report in therefore using a REST call. The types of external REST calls are basically, unlimited, really, depending on the REST enabled app or service that you're connecting to. As I said, we're going to be providing a few examples of this. So I'm getting all this jargon out of the way now, but you're going to see it live in just a few minutes as Roman walks you through the examples. You'll see everything that I'm talking about will sort of come together when you see it in person. As you can imagine, the advantages of using REST calls are quite numerous. Therefore talks about it a lot. Other apps and services talk about it a lot. It's because there's major advantages and major benefits of doing so. The main reason really is that a REST call is an automatic and very modern and very easy way to achieve integration or communication with other apps or services. And this is that no code and low code stuff you hear people talking about all the time. It's not just REST, but REST would be included within that no code, low code kind of thing, because you're not actually developing in integration, you're not coding anything. All you're doing is really setting up these REST calls. Another great advantage with REST calls within therefore is they work especially well with therefore online. Because therefore online, being a cloud service, does not support the more traditional installed sort of custom developed integration model. So using a REST call opens up possibilities for therefore online systems to communicate with other software. Whereas, the more traditional integration model is quite restricted in a cloud environment like therefore online. REST calls are basically the standard, the only thing you want to use really to communicate cloud to cloud. So cloud service to cloud service, which is more and more nowadays. Everything is becoming a cloud service if it isn't already so. In sum, what can we say? Using REST calls basically adds a lot of value to a therefore installation. This is why we feel that it's important to be able to speak about these features with customers. If you are a representative of Canon or a partner who's selling therefore, even if you're not installing or configuring the system, we think it's important for you to understand the added value of doing this. And simply knowing that therefore supports REST significantly enhances the function and value of a system and can help elevate the therefore experience also for the end user. It's a great way to do more with your therefore installation. I'm now going to show you a few examples of REST calls. So just sort of common business case scenarios. And after that, we're going to move on to actually the live demo where Roman will show us actually these pieces working together. A very common, probably the most common scenario is using REST services to communicate with a third-party ERP or an accounting system. Extremely common. Basically, every organization and business has to deal with accounting. And using REST, you can check for things like, has the invoice been booked, which account it was booked from, you can check tax information, or even use internal, therefore, web services to check if the invoice is already in the system or not. Basically, this allows information to flow between therefore and the other system to ensure that accurate accounting information is easily available. And this, like I said, this is probably the top use case scenario for many of our customers. Another interesting example, and one we're also going to see a demo of, is using a REST call to get information from a currency conversion website to convert invoices from one currency to another without user intervention. This is not such a common scenario for your everyday business, especially not somewhere like in the United States, but on a global scale, it's more of a relevant one, often used in Europe. Canadian businesses doing business with the US would also benefit from something like this, about basically using a REST call to get timely and accurate exchange rates, which is really important for reporting and accounting purposes. And as I said, we're going to show this in just a few minutes. This is another really common one, and is a scenario that is being used more and more. I'm sure that nearly everyone has encountered this in their everyday life. That is, well, you don't know that it's happening, but you're on the receiving end of it. So using REST to automatically send SMS or text messages. There's many online services that are available that use REST to allow you to post information from therefore to a service that can send SMS messages. So some examples of this that you have probably, like I said, probably nearly all of us have experienced at some point was most likely a REST call in the background making this happen. For example, a text to let you know that your order has been fulfilled or your order is ready to be picked up at a doctor's office, for example, especially during the times of COVID. Remember, they wouldn't let you in the waiting room. You had to wait outside and you'd get a text message when to come inside. Another simple example is general customer service, right? Keeping in contact with customers, sending them coupons or updates, that kind of thing. It just gives more interaction. Within the therefore context, you can use a REST call to basically send a text message with whatever information you want to have in there. So it's a quite common scenario overall, and with therefore as well. This is a really good one. This is maybe less common. I wouldn't say that it's used too much, but we just think it's a really cool example. Lots of online travel services offer REST API services. So this means that you can get updated information like flight information, maps and directions, and more. You know, Google Maps is also another example of this. Things like flight radar or airports with information about arrivals and departures. This is useful for industries where travel is often taken, or for example, like for airport pickup services, to get accurate and up-to-date flight times before picking passengers up from the airport. So this is just a cool one. This is not such a common one, but it's more of one of those cool little things that you can do with it. We wanted to mention this because this is new with Therefore 2023. You can now also send documents via REST, not just information or metadata, also documents as well. So you can, for example, send an entire Therefore document from Therefore to another application like an ERP system, like a CRM system, of course, assuming they support that function. And you can also do something really cool, like you can send a document to a third-party service like Google Vision, and then you can do some cool stuff within that, like you can do some OCR and recognition and things like that. And I don't want to spoil it, but Roman has a really cool demo of something like this working. So, I mean, really, the possibilities are kind of endless, and it's part of the appeal of why people are so interested in this. The important thing I want to impress upon all of you is that REST services are almost everywhere already. As I said, you know, with the examples I used, for example, with the text messages, they're already everywhere. We just don't know it. But if you can dream it, it probably exists. You can probably do it with a REST call. So now that we've seen some more theory examples of what kinds of problems REST could solve, we're now going to see some REST calls in action. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Roman, who's going to show us 4 examples of how you can use REST calls. I want to say the demos are quite high level. We're not going to get into the specifics of the configuration too much. And they really only show you a very simple example of what's possible. You can do a lot more. You can get a lot more complex. But we hope that the examples that you see here will inspire you to think of other new and creative solutions that you can solve using REST calls within Therefore. So Roman, I think at this point, I will ask you to share your screen. I'll hand it off to you.
Can you please stop? Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So can you see it, my screen? Yeah.
Yes, looks good.
So Kono, thank you very much. It was very informative. So I hope that now the examples that we prepared will illustrate, you know, what you were sharing with us. We prepared like 4 examples. to support the whole story about the REST call service task. As Kono mentioned also, once again, this is not a technical training. So we have our e-learning course where you can find more information about how everything can be configured. And also as a bonus, we will also include some of the examples that will be shown today for the first time, presented to you, will be also included in the e-learning. So you can also go and explore it by yourself. Okay, first example that we are going to share with you is a very easy one. Maybe, as Kono mentioned, it's not relevant for your market, but it's a good example just to be shown as a starting point. So we will use in this first example, one publicly available API service called exchange rate host. And we will just do the get a currency exchange rate from this service. So we will try to convert, I don't know, certain amount of euros to US dollars. And let's see how it looks like. So as I said, most of this demonstration will be shown from the user perspective. So user experience first, and then I will touch a little bit of the configuration, the most important parts. So I'm opening now the Therefore Navigator here. And what I will do here, I will create a new document. And as you can see, there are just a couple of fields here. So I will enter some amount. And then here I have an option to select the base currency and destination one. So in this case, we are using euros and US dollars, but of course, you can populate the list with the other currencies if it's required. Exchange rate field is at the moment empty. And basically, once we request this information from this external API service, this value should be automatically populated if everything is okay. The converted amount also could be sent back, but in this case, what we are using the standard option that is available in our software called the calculated fields. So basically, we can do the calculation by using our features. So amount and exchange rate will generate the converted amount here in this field. So after saving a document, I will try to find it. And what you can notice immediately that here, even from the hit list, you see the converted amount and exchange rate are also populated here. So even if I click on the index data dialog, you can see what happens. So very quickly, in a matter of seconds, we received this response from our external API service called, in this case, exchange rate. How actually this was configured. So in the Solution Designer, quickly, I will open a workflow that is that helped us to generate this exchange rate. So as you know, in the Solution Designer, under the group of the automatic tasks, we also have a standard task called call REST service. And we use that one, of course, to request this information from exchange rate web service. In this case, as a first step, what you have to do, you need to create a new request. I will not do it right now because it is already configured. I will just open the existing one. And as Kono mentioned also during his presentation, you can select one of the available methods and specify the base URL provided by the API service or app, and also the method that should be called. This information always should be checked and explored by the API documentation supported by particular provider. And as well, the other information such as parameters that should be sent. For instance, in this case, you see the key is a base, and euro, and symbols are US dollars. So basically all this information I can quickly just show you for this example. For the other ones, I will not go to their API documentation, but all these details about the URL, the method that should be requested, parameters that should be sent, the authorization part. In this case, what is nice that there is no any authorization or API key that is required, because this service is freely available. And then if something needs to be sent through the body, also all these things can be found in the documentation. So I will open just this website for free foreign exchange rates, and there is a section for API documentation. If you jump into that section, you can see here how the request URL looks like. Also, we are using the latest endpoint, which will return us exchange rate. And here you can find additional parameters. Some of them are optional, some of them are required, and all of this you can find with supported by some examples in the documentation of this API service. So you see base symbols and basically the URL and the method that we are calling is get. All of these infos we found, and we used them to configure this workflow task. That was actually the first example, very simple one. Yes, the one thing that I would like also to mention here, that as a result, you will, as Kono mentioned, so you have a request and response basically. And as a response, we will receive a JSON file that will contain certain values. In this case, because we would like to exchange euros to US dollars, then I will receive in the JSON file the information about the rates for US dollar. And then I can update the matching field on my category, which is called exchange rate. Also, if you want to test if if the communication is established between therefore and some external API service, there is a test button where you can provide one therefore document ID. In this case, we already saved a document here, and as you know, every document that is saved into the therefore will generate a unique therefore document ID. So basically here I see it's 223. So if I enter this here, and if I press on the start button, then you can see the request that is called, the method, and etc. And the status code 200 usually means that everything is okay. And this is the response that we received. And if you noticed here under the rates, we got the one for US dollars. And basically, this is what we were assigning to a matching index field on our category for the currency conversion. That was a bit technical just in the first example. Then we can jump on the next one, which will show you the possibility to, let's say, send information from therefore to, for instance, on an ERP system or CRM system. In our case, we are going to show you an example where we will use the Quickbooks accounting system. And here, what we prepared, we have a category for bills or invoices. So there is one simple accounts payable workflow process that will be triggered once we save a new document in this category. And basically what should happen after approving that bill, the next task in the workflow should send our document and its index data to Quickbooks. And then I will show you that actually the same entry appears in the Quickbooks as well. So what I will do now, I will create a new document. As you can see, this is a category with a few index fields. bill number field will remain empty. Of course, you can have a real bill number that you can find on a bill, but also here, what I would like to show you that if integration is established in a proper way, that we will receive from the QuickBooks API the internal bill ID number, and that number we are going to use for another call. But I will show it that to you once I save this. So basically, this will remain empty, and as a response, we should receive this value updated here on the form. What I will populate here is a vendor, account, and a customer, and keep in mind that all these details are coming also from the QuickBooks. So basically, I have a matching one, and also with the REST calls, you can create things. For instance, if a vendor does not exist in a QuickBooks, firstly, with the REST call, create a new one, and then create a bill, or any missing information firstly can be checked for existence, and if is not existing already in that third-party system, firstly create it, and then you can proceed. So I will just select one of the vendors here, and I will select account as a description. I don't know, Ford Focus. Amount, we can enter some amount and details about customer. Total amount also I would like to receive as a response from QuickBooks. So I will attach also a document, it will be a bill or invoice, and then I will save this. This is now triggering a workflow process for accounts payable. I can show you the workflow history. So if I open it, you can visualize where we are at the moment in the process. So with intention, we also placed here one manual task to stop a workflow before we execute this call REST service task. So I will just firstly approve a bill, and then if everything is okay, two things should happen in the background. So the information that we collected here on the therefore side, after scanning a document or in any other way, will be sent or passed to the QuickBooks. So new bill will be created in the QuickBooks. And as well as another part of that call, we will create a link to a therefore document that was saved a few minutes ago here in this category. So let's approve this bill first. Okay, and then if I refresh my hit list, we see that something happens here, and even now I can check the history and see that most probably I received the positive response, and now I'm at the next task in my workflow. Even from the hit list, I can notice that the bill number was populated. If you remember, it was empty at the moment when we saved this invoice. So
Roman, just as a clarification question, the bill number is generated by QuickBooks after you send a new bill, right?
Exactly.
So
exactly.
like if you save another one now, so this one is 184, and if you save another one now, for example, it would create 185, and then
exactly.
So that is all
you can have
created in
original,
QuickBooks.
for instance, like here I saved an invoice file, right? So I can have a field for this one. Even that field for bill ID could be hidden, you know, but here intent was just to show you that it will be updated. In reality, you will use this field just, you know, for another calls and provide this ID maybe as an attribute for another calls, you know, like if I want to create or attach this invoice to then one of the required parameter would be like a bill number. And yes, you are right. The next one will be 185 and so on.
Perfect.
See also the total amount we also updated here. Of course, you can use the standard feature for calculated fields, but here I updated the value. You will see the configuration side. Before I show you how that was configured, let's see what happened now in the QuickBooks. So we have here a demo QuickBooks account. So here we are using like a sandbox environment. And as you can see here, there are a lot of different business entities, such as, I don't know, if I click here on Get Paid and Pay section, then here I can find the different business entities, such as vendors, bills, I don't know, customers, invoices, and etc. So I'm interested here in the bills because I use that business object in my RESTful task. And if I click on this, now I should find in for today one new bill that was just generated. So let me check. Yeah, this is the one. You see the name of a vendor. So if I open the viewer again, it's a matching vendor and even the customer. I can even open it and see the details that the line items were also sent here. So you see the bill created on this date. If I open it now, I can see even more details. So bill date, you see the amount, you see also the line item that was sent from therefore. And as an additional call, you can see here that I attach something. I could attach the whole document, but we will save that for the next example. Here, I showed you that you can attach a note as well. So if I click on this, you can see I can specify the text, and what you can find here is the link to a therefore document that is available. You can open it by using therefore dynamic web view application. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a way to make this as a clickable link so that you can just click and immediately open it. But you know, for now, you can just copy this and paste it into the browser and open it like that.
Yeah. So basically what this does is it gives you the ability to pull up the document in to actually view the document, even though we haven't. So just to be clear, we haven't sent the document itself to QuickBooks.
Exactly.
But what we're doing is we're attaching a link to the bill in QuickBooks so that you can pull it up and view it with that URL there. And it's important to know that that URL was automatically generated according to parameters that we put into the REST call. So that's how that's happening. And it's a good way to keep the document and therefore, but make it visible from QuickBooks.
Correctly, Kono, you described that better than me. Exactly what you said. So I could, here you see the attachment, and I could possibly also attach, I don't know, like a file like this, to be visible. And then by clicking, I don't know, now I attached wrongly the JSON extension,
right.
But then you would click on this. And in the documentation of this Intuit Developer API, you can find also different methods that can be used. For instance, attach images and notes. And I use the first one, for this example, attaching a note to an object. But you can also find on this web link also how you can attach a file to an object for new attachment, for existing attachments, and then also you can find the details about that.
Yeah.
So
and this is why we say it's important to look at the API documentation of the service you're connecting to, because that's really telling you everything that's possible, everything that you can do.
Exactly. You have to explore it that first in order to be able to start configuring anything on our end.
Right.
Yeah. Just quickly to show you maybe some parts of some configuration steps that we perform in order to set this up. So QuickBooks accounts payable. So I will just open the task. So the first thing that you can notice here, that now under the one single REST call service task, I have like multiple calls. And that's something new. I want to mention also that the currently or latest therefore version 2023 and online versions supporting this. So basically, in our scenario, you actually saw exactly what happened. So with the first call, we created the bill. If I open this, you see that is a post method, and then I have the request URL. Again, in the documentation, there is an excellent documentation, for instance, for the Quickbooks, where I can find all the details like how the bill can be created and what is the base URL, you know, if I'm using the post method, if I need to request something in the body and etc. So this is basically specified here. For the authorization part, you can see like in the first example, it was none, but it can be more complex, like in this case, OAuth2 authorization code is used as a type. And then also all these details you will find in the API documentation of QuickBooks. Then basically you can see here that there is also a new thing that is available in the latest therefore version. It's a document tab to send a document. In this case, with intention, I haven't used that method. I used the attachable object just to attach a note. But in the next two examples, actually in the last example, you will see also how this tab can be used, where we can send actual file, you know, to external API. Here for the body, also in the documentation, you can see what needs to be sent through the body. And as a response, okay, 200 is success code. At the beginning, also, you see on this first form that how when I received the response, the JSON file, then basically I will get the bill ID, and this is the bill ID Kono mentioned, internal one that was created by QuickBooks, and I'm updating the bill number column and total amount columns here on the therefore side. Why? You see the name of the first call is create bill. So you are, and then basically what is nice now, within one call, you can call multiple actually under the single call REST service task, you can have multiple calls. So with the first one, I will receive the bill ID. And then what is nice, in the next one, under the same task, I can use note one, where I also have a post method with a touchable object. And here, basically, what I can do under the body, you can see I'm defining what is the type that I'm using here. In this case, it's a bill. And you see the required value is to pass the unique bill ID number. And here you see this is the name of the first call that we performed. And we are passing this as a value. And then you see here as a note, what you have seen here under the bills, the note that was attached. That's the text that we were passing to the note. So and it says final text. So basically I can use a script to prepare the text that I would like to send. In this case, I'm using the therefore web document link, and I'm specifying some text. The bill is saved into the therefore plus the link to a document. And you can see this is a local variable called the final text, and that's why I'm assigning that over here. Okay,
perfect. Roman, I just was going to suggest let's look at the example with Google Vision first, in case we run out of time. That's the more interesting one.
Yeah, exactly. And as Kono suggested, for the third example, maybe some of you already saw it. I have to give a credit to our colleague from pre-sales department, Vitor. I guess that most of you already know him, so he was very kind, you know, to share with us this example, and it's a really a real life example, and it's related to the region where you are coming from. So the example that I'm going to show to you is related to driver licenses, and we have a couple of sample documents, you know, how a driver license looks like. In this case, we are going to use a Google Vision service And we are going to extract the information from a US driver license automatically. So you will see Google Vision also support one OCR engine. So optical character recognition is available there. So basically we will send this file to the Google service. Google service will perform the optical recognition, the text will be extracted, sent back to the therefore, and then we are going to use one simple script, which will also use the regular expressions to get the data that we need. For instance, next to the FN, which stands for the first name, we will search for these 2 characters and then extract everything next to it to get the name. So let's show it, then you will better understand it and visualize it.
Yes, it's easier to see it in action first.
Yeah, exactly. So I will just now go to the category and save new document. So here I will attach one of the available sample files for Alexander. And as you can see, this is just a demo category, so the file is attached. Here we have a one index field where, as a response, we should get all the text that will be recognized and extracted by the Google Vision service. And then we will, thanks to additional script, we will extract only the parts that are required and update the fields for the first name, gender, and etc. So if I save this, notice that everything is empty. And now if I search for this document, immediately also you can notice that there are some values here. If I click on the index data dialog, everything is automatically populated. So the text was recognized. So this is the JSON response that we received. And then there is a one script that we are using to get the information that we need. As I said, like we have we will try to find the presence of the certain keywords like a first name and then extract this, and then it will be sent over here.
Roman, I don't think we need to take a look at the script for this necessarily.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but basically, I just think it's really cool that you can send an image, you save it with nothing. You literally saved it with no index data. You get it back, and all the index data is there. So that's pretty cool. And as Roman said, that's actually just an OCR happening in the back end through the Google API. You just get it back in therefore, and it's done for you. Very cool example.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we take a look at the last example?
Yeah, the last example. First 3 examples were showing you how to use the external calls. Also, Kono mentioned that you can use some internal calls by calling our therefore web API. And there are numerous things that you can do. So, for instance, there are different operations that are supported. Like, I don't know, if you want to delete the document, create the case, add a new keyword dictionary. And then this is, I'm using now my virtual machine, so everything is locally presented here. But even for therefore online, you have also access to all these endpoints. And in our case, what we are going to do, we will just demonstrate how document can be deleted. And what I will do, I will just open one category. Actually, I will firstly save a document in delete document category, just to show it to you what will happen now. So I will attach any document, doesn't matter, but it can be invoice. File name was recognized, saving it. I will find that document. With intention, I didn't want to trigger a workflow automatically because, you wouldn't see anything. So as a proof that we really saved firstly file here and that the file will be gone or disappear in a moment when we start the workflow, we didn't trigger this process automatically. So I will start it manually by calling the process. Click on this. If I refresh the hit list, you can see there are no items to show. Believe me or not, but this was requested a lot of times in from some European countries, you know, and even in Asia. And some of technicians also requested this to be like available as a standard task, like we have in the solution designer, I don't know, export document or copy a document. And as you can see, it's very easily configurable by using our Therefore Web API. Even if you don't have a task for it, you can create it. I don't know, Kono, do you think that we should show the design side of this or not? I think
Just I think we're okay, because we had a really good look at the first two, how what they look like on the configuration side. In the end, you know, a REST call is a very personal, it's a very customized thing, right? So it's really up to the system designer to decide how exactly they want to structure their call. You know, we saw a good example of what some of those could look like and the types of things you can do. So I don't think we need to necessarily look at the configuration of this. But in any case, Roman, I believe that's it with your demos for today, right?
Exactly. I will then, Kono, hand it over again to you. I will stop it, and thank you for watching these examples. I hope it was beneficial to all of you.
Great. Well, Roman, thank you so much. I know that was a lot of effort going into those demos, but I think they showed a lot of the types of things that you can do with REST calls. And of course, we also want to send, I'm not sure if he's on the call, but if Vitor, you're on the call, thank you for the for the cool Google Vision demo. You're a genius. All right. All right, let's move on then. I just need 5 more minutes, guys, so we're going to finish on time. So before we end, I just wanted to mention a few things, and that is specifically, what is the difference within a therefore context of how REST calls differ from a typical integration. So both the REST call function and the traditional deeper integration allow information from 2 different systems to be exchanged. But in the deeper traditional integration model, which would require, you know, coding and actually getting a developer to put something together, the information is, depending how it's developed, but it's usually much more free flowing, can be exchanged more ad hoc intervals. There's a lot more customization possible. Because within, therefore, a REST call is only available as part of a workflow, you are more limited in when and how that information can be exchanged. So in a regular deep integration between therefore and another system, if you can visualize it like a busy highway, there's information flowing back and forth, merging from one side to another. The REST call is not exactly like that. It's much easier, but it doesn't have all of those possibilities. So in many ways, the REST calls and therefore are not so much a busy highway. It's more like a railroad. It's not a perfect analogy, but let me explain why we think of it like this. When you're riding a train, right, with a railroad, there's a path with set stops and possible destinations. You can travel in either direction, but the train can only stop at specific destinations and according to the timetable. And you have to actively get on the train to go somewhere. And this kind of represents the limitation of REST calls within therefore. As I mentioned, the REST call is only available from the therefore workflow and only in the times and constraints that have been previously configured. To be clear, there is no ad hoc REST call function. The REST call must come from therefore when the workflow is started. That's just how it is. And although it's possible to configure loops and multiple calls, as we saw in Roman's example, the REST call is limited to this workflow environment. So we just wanted to make that clear. So you're on a track here. You have to choose to use the railroad, and you can go on the path that the railroad goes. This means that when you are setting up a REST call function, you have to carefully understand this limitation and create the correct expectations about what is possible with the communication. As a final thing, I wanted to mention more for the sales folks. I hope we didn't lose you too much with the with the technical explanation. But what are some of the discovery questions you can ask, or even if you're a therefore user, if you are asking yourself these questions, maybe a REST integration may be helpful for you. So generally, good cases for REST calls are One, when you are the customer, you know you need to get or post information to other applications, to websites, or even from within Therefore. Also, if you are using Therefore online, you may, again, you may not be able to use the traditional integration method, or you may have trouble accessing external database. That's another good use case for using REST calls. Or quite simply, you can boil it down to having a process in which information exchange regularly occurs within two systems. That's a perfect use case scenario for why you'd want to use REST calls. Conversely, on the other hand, a REST call probably won't be good if you can't tell what information you are looking for consistently. So if you have a process in place where you know you always need to get this type of information, that's the perfect scenario. If it's not always the same type of information, or it's not, the scenario changes every time, it's probably not the best use of this. As with any sort of automation, it's best when there is a predictable pattern of what's going to happen. Of course, it bears mentioning, I think it's obvious, but it bears mentioning that the third-party app that you are connecting to needs to have a RESTful API. So it needs to have an API that follows the REST protocol in order for it to work. As I mentioned earlier, if you're not sure of this, a very simple way to check is to just Google the name of the app or service and REST API. So if it's Salesforce has it, we know that. But if you Google Salesforce REST API, you'll find information about it. You should get the results and the documentation of this. So overall, we wanted to say REST calls are very useful, but just remember a few things. One, it's a workflow task. Again, it's not this ad hoc kind of thing. It is a workflow task. If the workflow is disabled, it's not going to work. And if you have workgroup edition, it's also not going to work. The reason for that is very simple. Workgroup edition within Therefore does not have workflow. So if you are using Therefore Essentials, if you're using Therefore Business or Enterprise, and if you are using Therefore Online, works perfectly fine. But if you are using Workgroup Edition, clearly this isn't the right use case for you. Again, I mentioned this before, but in case I mentioned it very early, I know some people hopped on a little bit late. There is a very good course that goes very much into detail. We said this is not a technical training. Well, this course here is definitely a technical training within our e-learning called Workflow 3 REST Call. Also, we recently updated it to reflect the changes that were made in Therefore 2023, such as the ability to do multiple REST calls to do multiple REST calls within one function within the workflow, and also to be able to send documents. As usual with our e-learning, these are maintained all the time. They're always up to date with the latest developments, so you can be sure that it gets updated as any changes are made.